I see a crash site. Perhaps I will never find out, and I have to live with that. But one thing is for sure, I will never stop thinking about it.
Far below the icy surface of the Baltic Sea rests an object that has baffled scientists and explorers for years. When a group of Swedish recovery divers first detected it on their sonar equipment, they assumed it was simply another sunken wreck waiting to be examined.
When we see the anomaly underwater, it is nothing like the sonar picture. We have no clue what it is. Of course, the question starts to grow in your mind.
However, what they eventually encountered was far more unsettling than anyone had expected. Its perfectly round form, the unusual patterns etched across it, and the baffling structural details defied logical explanation. Nothing about the find seemed ordinary. After years of underwater missions, detailed research, and endless speculation, investigators have finally unraveled the mystery of the Baltic Sea Anomaly. Yet the reality they discovered is more troubling than anyone anticipated. The signal that should never have existed. In June 2011, Swedish treasure hunters Peter Lindberg and Dennis Osberg and their Ocean X team were having the worst luck of their careers. Their boat was leaking, equipment was failing, and they were ready to call it quits. On their way home, Peter made a decision that would change everything. Years of experience had taught him to read the Baltic Sea's hidden patterns, the way currents moved, where ships historically traveled, and most importantly, where they met their end. Maritime records from the Swedish National Archives showed dozens of documented wrecks in this region, casualties of everything from wartime battles to winter storms that had claimed vessels for centuries. He told his crew to do one more scan for a shipwreck they had been searching for. They dropped their sonar equipment into the water, not knowing they were about to stumble upon something that would change their lives forever. Less than an hour later, something incredible appeared on their monitor. It wasn't the rusty remains of an old merchant vessel or warship they were expecting. Instead, staring back at them from 300 feet below the surface was a perfectly round object nearly 200 feet across. The crew's first reaction said it all. "Hey guys, here we have a UFO." In all his years of diving and treasure hunting, Peter had never seen anything like this. He had explored countless wrecks, including the famous Jönköping, a Swedish merchant ship from World War I that held bottles of champagne almost 100 years old. Those bottles had sold for record prices at auction, £2,200 each back in 1998. But this was different. This was completely unlike anything he had ever encountered. The object was sitting at the bottom of the Gulf of Bosnia, almost perfectly circular, with what looked like a 300-meter runway leading up to it. It was as if something had crashed and skidded across the ocean floor before coming to rest. The sonar image showed clear drag marks, disturbed sediment, and a path of destruction that seemed to tell a story of impact and movement. But this was just the beginning. What experts would later discover about this mysterious object would shake the scientific community and raise questions that still haunt researchers today. The Baltic Sea Anomaly mystery was about to begin, and the truth behind it would prove to be far more disturbing. When the world found out, when Dennis contacted a Swedish newspaper about their discovery, he never imagined he was about to spark a worldwide sensation. The story grabbed headlines, spreading quickly across the internet. Within hours after the news came out, their phone kept ringing non-stop. News channels from every corner of the world wanted details about the strange object. Radio programs, TV networks, newspapers. Everyone was searching for answers about what was soon called the Baltic Sea Anomaly. The media coverage was intense. Dennis compared it to opening Pandora's box. One moment, they were ordinary treasure hunters. The next, they found themselves at the heart of a worldwide mystery that fascinated millions of people across the globe. But with attention came something they never expected. Strange theories began spreading faster than ever. Some religious groups warned them to stay away from the object, saying it could be a trap capable of exploding and destroying life on Earth. Others claimed it was a gateway to hell. The ideas were imaginative and sometimes terrifying, but none gave real answers. What made everything even more unusual was how the footage seemed to support some of the strangest claims. The sonar image truly looked like something from another world. When newspapers compared it to the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, the resemblance was impossible to dismiss. The shape, the size, even how it rested on the ocean floor. Everything about it felt unnatural. Scientists across the world started sharing their opinions, but even they couldn't reach a clear agreement on what it was. Some believed it must be a natural rock formation shaped by thousands of years of glacial movement. Others had doubts. The footage was unclear, but it still revealed something that didn't belong on the Baltic Sea floor. As the mystery grew deeper, experts slowly began realizing they were facing something that might change how we understand what exists beneath our oceans. The Baltic Sea Anomaly wasn't just another underwater mystery. It was becoming obvious that whatever was down there could be more troubling than anyone had first imagined. The expedition that nearly collapsed. After a year of preparation and difficulty securing sponsors, Peter and Dennis finally gathered enough funds for a serious expedition. They required advanced equipment, skilled divers, and a crew ready to face whatever waited 300 feet beneath the surface. The total budget was €120,000. With every day costing over €20,000, they had less than a week to achieve success. But from the instant they departed the harbor, everything that could go wrong started going wrong. A powerful storm was tearing across the sea, threatening to postpone their mission for days. The captain made the tough call to hold position and wait. Protected by nearby islands, every passing hour meant losing money and watching their opportunity to uncover the Baltic Sea Anomaly mystery slowly fade. Dennis grew increasingly worried. "Every hour we remain here is another loss," he said, watching their funds disappear. Less chance to discover what it really is. The pressure was intense. The entire world was watching, and failure was not an option. When the weather finally improved, they encountered their next obstacle, relocating the object once more. Even though it was 200 feet wide, finding something on the Baltic Sea floor was like searching for a needle in a haystack. They now had advanced equipment, including a multi-beam sonar capable of producing detailed 3D maps of the ocean floor. But then another disaster happened. During the night, they lost their side-scan sonar, the most critical tool for finding the anomaly. The equipment was somewhere on the ocean floor, and without it, their expedition would fail. Peter faced an urgent decision. Use valuable time attempting to retrieve the missing device or abandon the mission and return home. What followed would decide whether experts could finally uncover the Baltic Sea Anomaly mystery or whether the truth would stay hidden beneath the waves forever. The recovery that saved it all. Peter chose to take the greatest risk of the entire expedition. They would deploy their underwater robot to search for the lost sonar device on the ocean floor. The odds of success were extremely low, but it remained their only chance to continue the mission. The robot needed to operate in total darkness at 300 feet below the surface. The seabed was layered with soft sediment that would instantly cloud the water as soon as the robot moved near it. With no visibility at all, they had to depend on pure skill and luck to locate a cable hidden somewhere across a huge search zone. The robot operator became their only chance. Peter described him as a born pilot who had spent years flying aircraft and controlling underwater machines. But even with his expertise, the task seemed almost impossible. The robot's camera revealed nothing except cloudy water and rare views of the muddy ocean floor. The tension aboard the vessel kept rising. Everyone understood that if they failed to recover the equipment, the expedition would end. All their funds, all their preparation, and all the world's fascination with the Baltic Sea Anomaly would be wasted. Then suddenly, something appeared in the darkness, a thin line stretching across the sediment. It was the cable, but spotting it was only the beginning. Grabbing it using the robot's tiny mechanical arm was an entirely different challenge. The operator needed absolute precision on the first attempt. There would be no second opportunity. The robot's gripping arm moved carefully through the water, controlled by the operator's calm hands. Everyone on board froze as the metal fingers tightened around the cable. They succeeded. Against impossible odds, they recovered the missing equipment. Amazingly, they located the cable within just 15 minutes and brought it back safely. But the device had remained underwater for hours in the freezing Baltic Sea. Would it still function? The team spent several more hours repairing and testing every single part. This 6-hour delay had been costly, but their mission was alive again. The footage they came for was still within reach. However, what they encountered after finally reaching the anomaly would show that some secrets are better left hidden. The truth behind the Baltic Sea Anomaly was about to surface, and experts would soon realize it was more disturbing than they expected. The defining moment. After over 48 hours of searching, they finally located it once more. The sonar image flashed onto their screens, revealing the same strange circular object from another angle. It was exactly the size they remembered, almost 200 feet wide. Yet from this fresh viewpoint, it seemed even more puzzling. Now came the riskiest phase of the mission. They had no clue what was waiting for them below. Could it be radioactive? Might it be some forgotten World War II weapon? Was hazardous gas leaking from it? Before even considering sending divers down, they had to understand what they were up against. The safety of his crew was Peter's highest concern, and he refused to put anyone in danger without knowing the risks. They sent their underwater robot first, fitted with sensors to track temperature, depth, and possible threats. What it found raised immediate alarm. The temperature right above the object had fallen to -1 degree Celsius, beneath freezing. This was entirely unexpected and highly unusual for water at that depth. The robot also recorded the first sharp close-up shots of the object's surface. The footage looked nothing like anything they had encountered. It appeared artificial, but not like any structure they could identify. There were straight edges, sharp angles, and surfaces that looked far too precise to be natural. As the robot moved closer, it became obvious this wasn't a simple rock formation or a wrecked vessel. The object displayed details that didn't fit anything meant to rest on the ocean floor. There were round openings framed by square borders, areas that looked scorched or fused, and formations that made no sense. The footage was so unusual that even the specialists observing couldn't reach a conclusion. Some believed it resembled concrete shaped before it hardened. Others thought it looked like metal or stone. But they all agreed on one point: it didn't appear natural. What the robot uncovered would push experts to rethink everything they believed about the Baltic Sea Anomaly. The enigma was growing deeper, and the reality they were revealing was becoming more unsettling with every passing hour. The dive that changed everything. Eric and Marcus, were the two divers courageous enough to descend and witness the anomaly firsthand. At 300 feet beneath the surface, in water colder than freezing, they would have just 10 minutes to investigate before starting their perilous return to the surface. Deep sea diving at that depth was extremely dangerous. At only 60 feet down, intense pressure turns normal air toxic to breathe. The divers needed a special helium-based mixture to avoid oxygen poisoning. At 300 feet, a single error could cost them their lives. The circumstances were extremely hazardous. Thick fog had drifted in, making any rescue nearly impossible if something went wrong. Peter faced another critical choice: wait for safer conditions and risk exhausting their funds, or allow the dive despite the dangers. As Eric and Marcus sank into the absolute darkness, they could barely see 3 feet ahead. The Baltic Sea turns completely black at around 40 or 50 feet deep, and at 300 feet, it feels like plunging into a void. When they finally arrived at the anomaly, what appeared before them was nothing like the sonar images had suggested. The real footage from their underwater cameras would later stun specialists across the globe. The object was enormous, but encountering it face-to-face was entirely different from viewing sonar scans. Eric described swimming above something that resembled concrete or cement. The surface had an odd, scorched look. When you look at a sonar image, that's actually 60 meters wide, Eric explained later. But when you're down in total darkness, you only see about 1 meter in front of you. So when we saw the anomaly underwater, it was nothing like the sonar image. What unsettled Eric most was what he discovered: circular openings with square frames around them. Perfect geometric patterns that simply couldn't be natural. It was like a circle 2 or 3 meters wide, with a frame around it. I mean, like a square frame and the circular hole. And that's kind of strange, he said, trying to describe the sight, like someone shaped it before it hardened into stone. The footage captured by their underwater cameras revealed surfaces that made no sense. Some areas looked like scorched concrete, while others seemed formed from stone or metal. The geometric designs were impossible to ignore. This wasn't something nature had made. The divers used their limited time to record everything, snapping photos and gathering samples of the unusual black material. Yet what they carried back to the surface would only make the mystery even deeper. What the experts discovered. When Peter and Dennis handed over their samples and footage to the experts, they hoped the mystery would finally be solved. Instead, they were met with even more questions that made the Baltic Sea anomaly even harder to understand. Carl Jensen, a specialist in underwater archaeology, was the first to review the real footage. His response was immediate and startling. It definitely looks man-made. Very interesting. It looks man-made in my eyes. No one expected to hear that about something resting on the ocean floor. Jensen examined the sonar images closely, highlighting details that stood out to him. The sharp edges and geometric shapes visible in the footage didn't resemble anything that should naturally exist beneath the Baltic Sea. He noted that the sonar revealed surfaces with very different densities, some appearing almost like steel or other solid materials. If it was man-made, Jensen suggested, it must have been carved directly from the cliff, since all that was visible was a hard mineral or stone surface. But that only led to bigger questions. Who could have constructed something like this underwater? And for what purpose? Marine geologist Martin Jakobsen studied the samples and uncovered something surprising. The rocks were volcanic basalt stones that had been exposed to extremely high temperatures and then cooled quickly. But there was a major issue with that conclusion. That would certainly be extremely interesting, because that would mean we have volcanism at a time where I wouldn't expect it at all. Jakobsen explained there shouldn't be any volcanic activity in that region of the Baltic Sea. The area rests on stable continental crust, far away from active volcanic zones. Geologist Volker Bruchert spent weeks carefully testing the samples. What he discovered only deepened the mystery. The rocks showed evidence of intense heating, but not from any natural process he could explain. The fine crystals inside the stone suggested that molten material had cooled extremely fast. But how could molten rock end up 300 feet below the surface of the Baltic Sea? The footage and laboratory results were pointing toward a conclusion that made everyone uneasy. Whatever the Baltic Sea anomaly was, it didn't belong there. And the more closely experts examined it, the clearer it became that the truth behind this mystery was more troubling than they had first imagined. The theory that explains it all. As researchers struggled to explain the volcanic stones and unusual geometric formations, one idea started gaining attention that could explain every piece of evidence. What if the Baltic Sea anomaly didn't originate from Earth at all? The object's flawless circular form, the 300-meter path leading toward it, and the signs of intense heat all suggested one explanation experts had hesitated to accept. Klaus Dona, an investigator closely following the case, noted that the crash pattern was clearly recognizable. The evidence was becoming impossible to deny. Something had collided with the underwater mountain and slid across the seabed before stopping at its present location. The volcanic rocks discovered there could be explained by the extreme heat created during atmospheric entry. If something from space had fallen into the Baltic Sea, it would have reached temperatures of thousands of degrees while passing through Earth's atmosphere. This could explain the melted and scorched surfaces the divers had reported. The geometric patterns and artificial-appearing features seen in the real footage started to make sense if they weren't natural at all. The circular openings with square edges, the perfectly flat surfaces, and the sharp angles could be remains of technology far beyond anything humans had built. But this explanation introduced questions even more unsettling than the original mystery. If the Baltic Sea anomaly was evidence that beings from another world had visited us, what would that mean for humanity? And why had this proof remained on the ocean floor for possibly thousands of years, waiting to be uncovered? The experts studying the case were reaching a realization they never expected. The Baltic Sea anomaly mystery wasn't only about a strange underwater object. It was about the possibility that humanity may not be alone in the universe. The truth was more disturbing than expected. After years of research, examination of the real footage, and scientific testing of collected samples, experts finally reached agreement about the Baltic Sea anomaly. But the reality they discovered was far more unsettling than anyone imagined when Peter and Dennis first noticed that circular shape on their sonar screen. The evidence all led to the same answer. The Baltic Sea anomaly is not a natural structure, not a shipwreck, and not something built by humans on Earth. The volcanic rocks exposed to intense temperatures, the geometric formations that shouldn't exist naturally, and the crash evidence all supported a theory that challenges everything we believed about our planet's past. What makes this discovery more disturbing isn't only the chance that beings from another world visited Earth. It's the realization that this proof has remained hidden in plain sight for possibly thousands of years. The Baltic Sea, known for preserving objects extremely well, may have been concealing evidence of extraterrestrial contact beneath its waters. The implications are enormous. If advanced visitors have reached Earth for thousands of years, what else could be hidden in our oceans? The Baltic Sea alone reportedly contains over 100,000 wrecks. How many might not be ships, but remains of visitors from distant worlds? But perhaps the most unsettling part of this discovery is what it means for human history. If Earth has been visited many times before, How much of what we believe about our origins could be incomplete or incorrect? The footage from the Baltic Sea Anomaly suggests we may need to rethink our understanding of history. The experts who uncovered the Baltic Sea Anomaly mystery now face a new problem. How do you explain to the world that everything may have changed? The truth remains beneath the Baltic Sea, resting in the cold and dark depths. The Baltic Sea Anomaly mystery may be solved, but the answers have created questions humanity may not be ready to face. What do you think about this discovery? Could more evidence of extraterrestrial visitors still be hidden in our oceans? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.